Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Sahara Omar. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing here in the state of Texas. And today's video is a requested video on what is codependency. Thank you for that recommendation. Codependency is an interesting dynamic that I see a lot in therapy, whether when I work with individuals or even when couples. And I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper, like what it is, what are common signs, where does it come from, and per usual, how do you overcome it, okay? All right, so when you think of the word codependency, I want you to think of heavy reliance on someone else, right? So the cutoff age of adulthood is 18 in the United States. So after 18, you are considered an adult. Typically, the brain is not developed until we're around 25 years old, and if we had trauma, there is about 5 more years of delay because the brain is stuck, right? And it still needs to make sense of like what happened. So around 30 is when majority of the population is truly mature. They know the right answers and they know what choices they have for themselves as well, okay? So, but typically, unfortunately, since the age is at 18, we want to keep coming back down to understanding after 18, you need to depend on yourself, right? You're becoming an adult. It is okay to have a sense of community and people that you can reach out to and seek feedback from, but dependency is automatically needs to be on the self, not on other people, right? So things like, for example, taking care of your hygiene and eating well and working out and thinking about your career choices and what relationships you want to be in and how do you conduct yourself in relationships, all of that falls back on the individual, okay? So the word codependency, like I said, it's like heavy reliance on someone else. It's almost like the person is saying, I cannot think, feel, or do without the permission of someone else, right? So, and this comes from not having healthy parents growing up, right? If we had healthy parents, typically they teach us how to be interdependent, right? That's another word. Interdependent means you are coexisting with people, you can solicit help and advice, but you're not waiting on them to approve of you and the decision that you are making, right? So healthy relationships create what we call interdependence, where dysfunctional relationships create codependency, okay? Now, what are common signs, right? So if you ask me as a clinician, I would say the number one reason why relationships end, whether on a romantic level, friendship, or even business or platonic level, is because of this codependency, right? It just shows up automatically in dysfunctional relationships, unfortunately. So the common signs are, first one is people pleasing, right? So people pleasing, I made a video on that. I encourage you to watch it. It's just this constant need to say yes, even when it costs you at the core, right? So typically this comes from a need for approval, not having a great sense of self-worth. So we seek and we feel guilty when we are operating in a people-pleasing space to constantly just look after people and say yes all the time just to get their approval and that connection that we have with them, okay? Another common sign is low self-worth, right? When we're codependent on people, typically we do not know our value. We don't know what we stand for and what we can contribute into this world. So we are codependent, right? Like relying on somebody else to make sure that we are worthy, right? And that creates automatically unrealistic expectations and that leads to more chaos, okay? Another common sign is weak boundaries, right? So individuals who are codependent on other people, since they don't know who they are and they're just operating out of people-pleasing space, they do have no understanding of their own personal boundaries. So they are constantly wanting to make sure that other people are okay, but also they take on roles like fixing and developing and controlling, of other people instead of just basically setting a boundary, right? Also, another common sign is fear of rejection, right? So if we avoid conflicts to keep people close to us, which is another form of people pleasing, because people pleasers typically do not like conflict, so they are afraid to be left behind, right? So this sense of abandonment kicks in. So because of that, it creates this fear of like, I don't want to be rejected, so then the codependency continues to breed in the dynamic, okay? And then the last common sign is taking care of somebody, right? So this feeling of you are responsible for fixing other people, right? So people who are in codependent relationships, they take care of people who have addiction issues and people who lack discipline and people who lack a sense of purpose in this life, right? It's almost like codependent individuals or people who have codependent tendencies, they typically look at people as like this helpless infant lens instead of seeing them as an adult who are responsible for their personal choices, right? So that's the last common sign that I want you to be aware of, okay? So now that we know where it comes from, right? So it comes from not knowing who you are. It comes from having difficult parents who didn't teach you how to be who you are. So then you grow up seeking connections that are based on codependency instead of interdependency. And eventually these relationships will always come to an end because it's not sustainable. The foundation is very shaky. It is control based. It's manipulation based. It's I did this for you. I sacrificed that for you. When in reality, nobody asks you to do that, right? And when you're dating, if you're single, it is highly crucial to look out for some signs that people have, right? So the question you should ask yourself is, why am I attracted to broken people, right, quote unquote? Or why am I attracted to somebody who has addiction issues? Why am I attracted to somebody who doesn't have any purpose? Why am I attracted to somebody who is not disciplined in certain areas of their life, right? Whether it is sexual discipline, financial discipline, moral disciplines, right? Like, so there's different type of disciplines that we need to be self-aware of. If you guys are interested, I'm more than happy to make a video on the different types of discipline areas that we need to pay attention to as well, okay? So if you are going after people like that, typically you have codependency tendencies, okay? And also it shows up, those are major ways. It can show up in minor ways as well too. So for example, if you are in a marriage and a relationship and your partner is doing things different than the way you do, it shouldn't get to you at the core, right? So if you're bothered by the way they're cleaning, for example, if you're bothered by the way they are thinking through a topic, right? Typically that's a sign of codependency because you're choosing, or you have chosen in this case, somebody who's different than you. So then why are you not accepting your differences, right? So typically it boils down to this one word again, codependency, okay? Now, the question is, how do we overcome it, right? So in order for us to overcome codependency, similar to all the videos that I shared with you before, you have to sit down with somebody, right? Like, go to therapy first. You want to understand the dynamics that you grew up in. Where does this come from? It's so fascinating. I would, as a clinician, never stop saying in my entire life, the brain cannot move forward if it doesn't understand how the damage happened in the first place, right? So you do want to understand where is this codependency is coming from, who you were codependent on. You probably had also a parent who emotionally was all over the place at times. So that creates automatic codependency because now you're relying on them to make sure that they are okay in order for your needs to be met as well, right? So typically the brain just wants to first understand, where does this come from, right? And then as you move forward, you have to be very self-oriented with your care, right? So you have to learn how to take care of yourself. You have to learn to ask yourself who you are. What are your thoughts? What are your core beliefs? What are your values? How do you feel about certain things? And take care of yourself, right? So codependency dies in the relationship when each person learns how to take care of themselves and not rely on their partner, right? Otherwise, if we are like, I'll wait until my partner gives me the love and then I will love on myself, that is utter chaos, right? And it's just not gonna work, right? So ways that you move forward is you want to learn how to value yourself, challenge your people-pleasing tendencies, learn how to set strong boundaries. I have a video on boundaries. I highly recommend to look back and become your own best version of yourself, even in the marriage. If you are currently married, even if you are in a long-term relationship, you still have the responsibility to become the best version of yourself. And that's how we overcome codependency in general. Alrighty. I hope you guys liked the video. Feel free to hit that thumbs up. Also leave me a comment on what other video suggestions you want me to make, and how are you in this process of healing. And then lastly, feel free to share this video as well with others, especially those who are struggling with codependency. It would help them tremendously. Alrighty, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you.